But first, we want to focus on the technical speaking aspect, which is today about. And as not everyone probably knows, everyone here, maybe as this is a panel, we start the panel with an introduction round. So as our new guest, maybe Inbal, can you get started with an introduction?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So my name is Inbal Levi. I'm the NB chair for the Israeli national body in the standardization and Work Week 21. But you've mentioned my relation to conferences, and truth is our Israeli conference is happening next week. And I'm really looking forward to it and excited. And of course, stressed and busy with everything that needs to be making sure everything is perfect. And we're really excited as well because we have approximately half of our speakers are people, international speakers, and we have Bjarne Starstrup, the creator of C++, coming over giving keynote. So of course it's going to be our largest conference yet. I think conferences are a great opportunity to meet, the international community. And that's actually, how I started. My first exposure to international C++ world was by giving a talk in our local conference, which was organized by Adi and Michael, which I still owe them a lot. For that, and I think it's amazing, and the path I did since, and how I got involved in a lot of things that I care a lot about. So I just want to tell people, if you're unsure that you want to take this step, I think you really should, and I really think it opens a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities. That's my experience, at least.
Good luck with the conference, Inbal.
Thank you.
So you want me to go next, Jens? Okay. So hello again, everyone. I'm Phil Nash. You may remember me from the talk earlier, but I'm also a developer advocate at Sonar, which means I get to do this sort of thing a lot, which is one of the reasons that I've racked up over 170 talks now. I also run a conference, C++ on C, which is actually going to be in about 3 weeks. So that's coming up soon as well. That's all going pretty well as well. It's nice to see all the conferences actually coming out of the pandemic times now, not quite back to where they were, but we're getting closer. So that's nice to see. I've also got my fingers in lots of other pies. Co-host of CPP Cast now, and also run C++ London. So if you're in the London area, you can come to our meetup. And I used to be I still am the original author of Catch, now Catch 2. I haven't really been an active maintainer for a few years now, but you may know me from that as well. So yeah, the chance you may have come across me before.
Yes, and I also may unmute me to introduce myself. Hey, I'm your host. I'm Jens Böller. I started more than 11 years ago meeting C++. Also have been running a user group for some time. That's this user group here now, but also the user group in Düsseldorf. And generally work a little bit in the last years as a conference organizer, community manager, etc. So let's see if we have any questions. So see on LinkedIn, there seems to be the normal quietness at the beginning of a panel. So what questions did I have prepared? Let's maybe talk about what talks are missing from your conference? What talks would you like to see?
I think for my conference, we're probably lacking some of the beginner material. We got a little bit, but not enough. It's nice to see that CPPCon had the Back to Basics track for years now. That seems to be going well. Always really popular with the attendees, but we don't get enough submissions for those tracks. So I think we need to do a bit more as organisers to get that sort of content in. You're muted, Jens.
Oh, you're muted.
Yes, as I mentioned already, I think that game dev is like one of those areas which is underrepresented at our conferences, where we definitely could see that, we have submissions on it. Would be nice. Embedded is something which was meeting embedded joining my conference now as a track will probably be a bit more prevalent at my conference. And as I said, yeah, beginner talks, tutorial talks, talks which are not as high level. People often like to talk about the things they work on. And so naturally, if you're working on something interesting, that is always a good talk. And especially if it's like in a field. Last year, Meeting C++ was a very popular talk about from the finance sector. Actually, not yet the most viewed talk, but it's on the way to become the most viewed talk, probably within a year.
Nice.
At my channel already has racked up, I think, over 100,000 views, which is pretty good. So there's a lot of things like if you look at the programs from the last years, if you has this been covered, and if you have a thought about that. And of course, want to hear Inbal's thought on this.
Sure. So I would be really happy to see more tooling talks in our conference. We actually have one that I'm really looking forward to. Anastasia from JetBrains is going to give a standard C++ toolset talk, which I'm really, really looking forward to see. But I think that debugging, sanitizers, and even a nice talk about compilers, and how do you recognize, how do you, maybe for beginners, how do you feel more comfortable with compilers errors, which is something that I find challenging for beginners. I think those things are really important. We don't have any talks about gaming. That's also unfortunate, because it's also a very fascinating territory. So maybe next year we'll get 2 more. And as you've mentioned, the beginners track is also something that, we were always happy to get talks aimed for beginners, but I really think that at that stage that we only have 4 tracks this year, which is relatively large for our conference. Maybe next year we would actually split it into a different track. And I agree that the CPPCon, having back to basic, I think it's a really important part of a conference. But yeah, there's a lot of topics I'm very interested at. So we'll see what happens.
So, which are common mistakes that should be avoided during a talk?
I think there's 2 mistakes where one leads to the other, and I mentioned it in my talk actually, which is trying to put too much material in for the time allowed, and then speaking too fast because you've got too much material to cover. At least that's a common mistake for me.
You technically took my I was going to say
Sorry
that.
about that.
That's fine.
And for extra emphasis, I had too much material in my talk today.
That happens. I think I had my machine reboot on stage before the talk, just because I connected to the projector. So everything will be fine until you actually connect your machine to the technical things to give your talk. So be prepared to have like an earlier version or the current version, if you can, of your talk on a stick to be able to, switch laptops. I think a really big mistake as a speaker is to be late, to like show up on time, because if you're on time, you're already late. Especially if you're giving a talk on site. Online, we're trying to get around this problem with pre-recording, so your talk will be on time. But if you're on site, it's really, really important that you have time to pre-check. Sometimes you can do that like the day before, but mostly if you've done it before, if you have experience with presenting on various projectors with your machine you're presenting from, it's mostly enough to be like 15 minutes, 10 minutes early there to be wired up and to connect your laptop and project your slides, and then to be ready for that, to give your talk.
Want to repeat the point you made about having your talk saved somewhere else as well, whether it's on a USB stick or I always keep all of my talks in Dropbox. So I've actually got all my talks going back to 2004 in there. It's only a couple of times I've had to fall back to that. Ironically, the first time I was actually giving a talk at DisplayLink. So the company that actually makes display connector technology couldn't connect my laptop to their screens. So I had to fall back to my Dropbox copy and use somebody else's machine. But I had that option. So yeah, it's definitely something to do.
Yeah. And now you have a great story.
Well, exactly, yes.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea to have your talk also in the internet in this time of, where we're living in. Let me see if there's a new question. Yes. I need to copy this over and click Add Banner and then click Show. Also, if LinkedIn wants to have an answer to a question, etc., you can post questions to the chat, and I'll be able to also put them in here. So this is a question about format we're looking for. The standard format is a talk with slides. This is unfortunate sometimes. But I find this is a good question. Are you only looking for talks or also learning sessions which include coding exercises? Some attendees have laptops, others don't, but yeah. So would something like that be welcome? Let's discuss this.
So I can say for our conference, for example, we have our conference is technically on June 6th and 7th, but we have a pre-conference workshop day on the 5th, on which this is a workshop in a small class with attendees coming with their laptop and actually doing the exercise, coding, etc. We also have more of open, and this actually costs some money, significant amount of money, because the instructors are actually giving this workshop, and they're professional, that this is their livelihood. We also have post-conference workshops which are more open, and they're designed to introduce a topic, not necessarily go that deep into it, but still introduce a topic to people that are new to it. For example, GPUs, and also we have a workshop about Intel technology. I think this is really great to be part of a conference. I think, personally, I love those. I love try things by myself. It may be like for a hall full of people, 200 people or 150 people, it may be a bit harder because it's enough that just one or few people are miss the link that you just posted or whatever, and it's kind of harder to do this. But I think that most cases, most conferences should at least have some kind of ability to allow also workshops. And me personally, I'd be happy to get, we'll be happy to get more workshops for our conference. So if you're interested in that, it doesn't have to be like a full day workshop. It's usually the framing, but you could also do like a 1 hour, 2 hour workshop. And that could be awesome as well.
Yeah, we have a similar arrangement with C++ on C, pre-conference workshops, which are typically all day. During the pandemic, we did experiment with half-day workshops during the main program as well. That actually worked out really well, although we were experimenting with a few things at once, and overall it wasn't a massive success, but everybody there really enjoyed it. I wanted to do that again now we're back in person, but because the numbers aren't quite high enough, we've actually gone down to 3 tracks instead of the 4 that we had before. I feel like we might be displacing too much of the normal content that way, but once we get a little bit bigger again, I want to give that another try. You could also do workshop style presentation in a normal 60 or 90 minute slot if you're very focused. I think one of the problems starts to be expectations. If people are not expecting to sort of go in and bring their own laptops and actually do something, then not everyone's going to be along with you. There may be a lot of extra disruption as people getting set up, which takes time as well. So I think you need to have that format established and people know what they're expecting beforehand. So definitely not out of the question. I think it's something to experiment with, but there are some things to take into consideration before doing so, shall we say.
Yeah, I think there's space for that, and there's space for submissions which are unorthodox and which don't, fit the usual talk with slides setting. We have had workshops at Being C++. I don't have them this year, I think, because my experience with workshops has not been that great from the audience take-up. That it's not like an automatically given that there's a lot of audience coming to the workshop. And also I find it sometimes hard to get the right workshops and to get the feeling like which workshop is actually being taken on by the audience. That's why you need to rent the room, you need to rent the technical things for it. There's a cost which you need to recover as a conference organization, and the overhead it adds to having these people in the workshop. So for Medium C++, I have found that it's sometimes hard to do that, and they didn't opt to have that this year. Maybe have that again, have some ideas there. But generally on this question, I think yes, this would be great to have something like a coding dojo, okay? If you want to moderate a coding dojo, if you want to give anything in an interactive format where you actually, make it clear from the beginning that the audience will interact with you, and that you do like a coding quiz or something like that. This can be fun, and people are open to that, to join you in the session at a conference. So yes, there's space for that, and you can definitely submit something like that. And it's very unusual to have such a submission, and you probably will then have at least conversation with the conference organization to get a feel like, are you able to host this session, and how do we want to make this part of the program? Because maybe we just put you in a normal slot, maybe put it in the evening program. There's other options. One thing we're doing this year at Medium C++ is we're having the launch back, and so we're going to put a track in the launch where people just meet up parallel to the normal talks and have like a user group meeting, user group organizers. We're going to have a meeting probably on Boost or Qt, depending on who's on the conference, who can, chair that. And so people just meet up and discuss their issues and their experience with a library, with a standard, with a committee. Probably have some committee members, so maybe have meet the committee session in the launch. That's also very possible and very popular and at Meeting C++, the launch session. Let's see, there's new questions.
I think you actually segued nicely into Oliver's question in a way, talking about other alternate formats.
That could very well be. Let's see. We are always talking about workshops. Why don't we modernize it a bit and have also a hackathon to attract the younger generation, which is hopping on Rust Python? Well,
again, those alternate formats, whether it's more hackathon-like or more workshop-like, if it's an established part of the program, there's a definite space to like a track or a day dedicated to that, then when people know what they're going for, then I think that can work really well. I think my concern is when you have it just as like one or two like sporadic sessions, it's not cohesive enough, and people are not going to have the right expectations going in. So yeah, you need enough submissions to make that work, and maybe planning ahead of time to say this is what we're expecting. So it'd be interesting to know how many people really want that sort of content in our communities. Maybe we just need to step up to it.
Yes, so I'll definitely, it's actually a great idea, and I'll be very supportive of that. I love hackathons. It's kind of a it's kind of a hobby. So yeah, hackathons are a bit different in the sense that, I mean, at least the formats that I'm familiar with is that people are expected to stay awake through the night, and and sometimes people are not, like, that's not what they're looking for in a conference. But I think we could definitely do this, and for some smaller group, or whoever is interested, of course. And I think it could be really, really great. So I actually really like this idea, and maybe we'll try it next year. Thank you.
So actually, thinking about it, C++ now, they do the library in a week thing, which is sort of like a background hackathon in a way. It's not quite the same thing, but a similar idea. Group of people get together and work on all the projects. By the end of the week, they're going to show off what they've come up with.
We actually had library and language in a week this year. Oh. So we also, so people are also working on language feature. But yeah, I agree. It's a great part of CPP now in my mind.
So, yes, there is a hackathon which is right now happening, or which not right now happening, but which is planned, I think, for July from CPP India, which has been announced. So they have a website about that, and they're organizing that. I think, it's a nice format to have if I find someone to organize this, right? You want to run a hackathon, be our guest. On the other hand, conferences always have a little bit of problem to know is the audience wanting to have that or not. We do this with the launch where we can host things, which is very popular, but like creating new space for things like that needs like folks which take on the organizing. The hackathon from CPP India is sponsored by Undo, and that's probably also an opportunity for sponsors to step up and organize something, add something to the conference, which we sometimes have had that some sponsors like run a coding contest or something. So generally, other formats and new formats are very welcome to the conference world. It's just often a lack of submissions or people wanting to do the putting in the work, which is the other part of organizing, that you have people that get to be the ones which organize this. And some conferences have that. There's like at ACCU the C++ quiz, which is one person organizing this. And we probably also at Mini C++ we had a C++ quiz, which probably will return this year in the evening. So sometimes we have that. Hackathons is now with CPP India maybe starting, and maybe we get some people together to organize a hackathon for the conference next week for Inbal. That's I don't know, that's gonna be a close call.
Yeah. We do have a quiz, so we at least have that. Yeah, Diego is gonna do a quiz in our Lightning Talk meetup. But yeah, I agree, and I just wanted to say, and it also relates to the previous question. I think that the sessions that involve audience participation usually turns out to be the best ones. So I definitely want to see more of those, and a hackathon or an interactive workshop are both great examples for that.
Okay. So one question I probably want to cover here is like, what kind of technologies do you prefer or have seen for giving and preparing talks, like tools? Like I know like various formats exist, PowerPoint, etc. Can we like quickly discuss this point? Like, what do you use to prepare your talks? What have you seen from other folks?
Speaking personally, I tend to use Keynote on my Mac for the actual presenting, mostly because I know it inside out and I can make it do pretty much everything I want. I would like to actually move to something maybe more browser based, because there's a lot of things I would like to do that would be easier that way, but none of the existing tools that I've seen actually do things the way I would like. So I keep thinking about writing my own because that's what we do. I haven't got around to it yet. So I keep going back to Keynote, which is fine. But for preparing the talks, I usually just outline stuff in Apple Notes. But any good note-taking tool would be fine for that. I've done mind maps in the past as well, but I found that there's not a big difference between mind maps and outlines for talks. But you can write more sort of long form notes in a Notes app. Doesn't suit mind maps quite so well. And my first ever talk I did at the ACCU conference in 2004, the whole talk was a mind map, just sort of zoomed around. That actually was quite effective, and I've sometimes tried to reproduce that in a slide format, but never quite achieved the same thing.
Yeah, so my first presentation was in Prezi, so I was very excited and was looking for something unique. But I have to say that since then I just fell back to PowerPoint. I think that in a sense, like I tend to put a lot of effort on how things looks, and I sometimes even too much. Like I'm a bit obsessed with things are being in the right place and all of that. So sometimes just doing the simple thing would be easier for me, because otherwise I'll find waste all my time in fitting colors and caring about the sizes of things. But yeah, I know that people really like, as you've mentioned, web-based things that based on JavaScript. I know one person who writes JavaScript programs, Hannah, for her presentations, and it shows because they're amazing, literally amazing. But you can do really neat things with PowerPoint as well. I really like Barry Rasvin's presentations. He's doing like transforming changing code using some PowerPoint features that I haven't had a chance to check. And I think the most important thing is that feel comfortable with the flow of your presentation. But it's also great to explore new tools. So those are the ones that I know.
Yeah, I still use OpenOffice, and that's on the one hand, I like that it limits me, so that I can focus on the actual content, and on the other hand, as Phil said, and yeah, JavaScript or like the CSS and HTML based slide systems are quite nice. Where I've been looking at. And the other problem is as a conference organizer, you have, it's not like your new talk, it's like also all the talks or presentations you always try to maintain for the conference, like the welcome message, or for the user group, the welcome message. So changing all of that would be a lot of work. But maybe it's worth it to, just have CSS available to use, CSS transitions, and do a lot of things in CSS. Would be cool to see if that works out. There was a question about, let me copy that and we can put that in a banner. There's banners here. Which is actually a good question on how much time does it take to prepare a talk?
I can give an answer to this, a precise answer. Actually, it's exactly how much time you have. If you have 6 months, it takes 6 months. If you have an hour, it takes an hour. Maybe an hour is a bit of a push, but
ask Tony, but an hour is just enough for him. Yeah, I agree. It's I find myself fixing both large and small things at the last minute as well. Sometimes it's just like constantly. It's like you're think when you prepare a talk, you're constantly iterating over the topic you want to talk about, and it's not even technically necessarily, but also how do you want to present it? How do you want to pass your, emphasize your points and things like that, and it tends to take over your time. So yeah.
I think it depends on how much time you want to take up with that, and often have in mind that stuff you're speaking on already has taken up time. Right, you learned that maybe, or maybe your motivation is to work on the talk because you want to learn something. Like, you want to learn about that feature, and then that is a different approach. And it depends on how much time you want to spend on it. I usually take some time every week. I have an afternoon where I work on the talk, or I'm supposed to work on the talk, and then. What has helped me a lot in the past is that I'm a bit earlier at the conference because of jet lag when I go to the conferences in the US, or because of travel opportunities. And then when I'm in the hotel, I often use that time to finish the talk. And that's also very common that people, work on their talks during flights, or in the hotel, or in talks where, that's also often why speakers are not able to really provide the slides in front of the conference, because they're still working on the slides. And then just when your talk starts, you finish with the slides often. That's very common.
That's why it's worth to be scheduled at the end of the conference, because then you're going to miss the whole conference because you're going to be in your hotel room preparing your slides.
That's a pro tip. I found it out too late, at least for my first talk, but yeah. But I will mention that for a new speaker, if you're a new speaker, I think that's around 3 months, at least from, the time of the conference start working on gathering the ideas is the minimum, because you don't want to, like, you could technically prepare a talk in a month, but me personally, at least from my experience, especially as a new speaker, you want to iterate over it as much as possible and make sure you feel comfortable with the presentation. So I think I'd suggest to try to aim for having 3 months or so in advance since you submit the abstract, or you start working on your talk. There's a really good chance you're going to get accepted. So, and if not, you can always give it in the next conference. So yeah, I really think that's like optimal minimum time for new speakers.
And you should try to factor in being able to deliver the talk ahead of the conference to a small group of colleagues or even family, friends, or at a meetup. It's another good opportunity to give a dry run of the talk before the final version, and you'll get some feedback and the talk will be better because of it, but also because it forces you with that deadline to say, right, it's got to be complete end to end by this date. Then going back, it's just polishing after that. Whereas otherwise you tend to polish it before it's finished.
And that also helps you practicing your talk, which
yes,
I have been rewriting talks because I was like, yeah, there's this interesting set of slides, but when I give the presentation, it doesn't align up. It's not what I want to do. Or it's I give the talk, I practice the talk, and I'm like, this slide. Even if when I wrote those slides, it was logical to put it here. Now when I give the talk, when I'm in the flow, I kind of find this a difficult slide and I have to move it somewhere else. I have to rephrase that. So I think that's the other point. It's like part of preparing your talk is also practicing your talk and like envisioning what's the topics you want to say. And that's why I think it's important to kind of, have an outline of your talk, to like have actual slide titles, like, and what you want to do in that hour. And I think we are a little bit on the end with questions. So it was almost 2 hours online. I think that's also long enough. So I'm quite happy with tonight. So if you still have any questions, maybe post them here, but maybe also Phil or Inbal have a question in their mind which they'd like to ask us or the audience. And if they don't, final things you want to say.
Question for the audience: if you thought about doing a talk but you've never done it yet, what's holding you back that perhaps we could help with, or maybe not? Be interested to know either way. And we have to wait for the streaming delay for them to actually hear this.
Yeah, maybe we get a reaction in chat. Okay, someone says thank you. Inbal, do you have a question in mind for us or the audience, or something to think about?
Yeah, I mean, again, Phil stole my thunder, but I will say that I think that it's more of a comment. I think that giving lightning talks is also a great way to start, because you get used to standing in front of audience. So maybe my question would be, if you are too intimidated by giving a full-length talk, what would hold you back from giving a lightning talk, which is, and I'm not necessarily saying this is easier. You have to take this under consideration when you prepare a lightning talk. Shorter talk can be even harder sometimes, in the sense of you need to manage your time, but it may be less intimidating. So yeah, so I'll continue Phil's question with same thing, but for lightning talks. We do have a lightning talk session in our conference, and this is exactly targeting new speakers. So I'd be happy to.
So I stole your thunder, so you went for lightning talks. That was appropriate. I find the lightning talks are a bit of a paradox. For new speakers, I think they're easier to get into because you've only got 5 minutes to fill. For experienced speakers, they're harder because how can I compress all this material into 5 minutes? But it's just the way it is. So Rene in the chat says mostly constrained time. So lightning talks might be a good way to go there.
So I know that I've heard all kinds of opinions on lightning talks. I've heard that they're incredibly hard and that they're the most advanced thing you can do. And on the other hand, if you think about the work you have to put in your slides, it can be so much less. Like I've seen people do lightning talks with 1, 2, 3 slides, and they were good. And the other thing is like when you want to start speaking or want to, start like presenting things, if a user group is near to you, actually we had a user group at least one user group organizer in the audience today, and we have I think 3 on stage here also, which are connected to user groups. User groups also always look for material. They sometimes host lightning talks in front of their program, and that is also where we can host other content like lightning talks. And what did we talk about just in a second? Yeah, quizzes and other content you can host in the user group too. So let me quickly see if we have any more questions, but I think we are getting to our time limit.
Yes.
I
think Roberto just had a suggestion for a future topic.
So right. Let's just put that in here that I can put that on screen for technical purposes. So could be like preparing a job interview. Could be that a good talk? And I think yes, it could be.
Yeah, we sometimes forget about the non-technical talks that are still going to be interesting to the particular audience. So job interviews is a great one for people that are new to the community. That's exactly the sort of thing they need to hear. We've got a talk at C++ on C on burnout as well. That's another thing that can be very relevant to a lot of us.
Yeah, I gave a lightning talk on that. And
yes, you did.
Your thoughts on this, Inbal?
Yeah, so I mean, everything that is related to development world can be a great lightning talk. I think in our pre-conference, we had a meetup to prepare people for giving lightning talks in the sense of like encouraging them and giving them some tips and things like that. And I think that there was a topic of how do you educate your team or your group with something new, like how do you propagate the knowledge, how do you make a larger contribution in your company. Everything that is related to this world, I think, is very interesting. And the special thing about it is that by bringing your experience to stage, you're making your talk unique because this is your experience. So, I mean, no one else have the same, background as you. And I think that just by bringing your personal experience is making your talk unique and worth watching. So.
Yeah, and to get back to the question on job interviews, I think there's multiple angles you can cover here. Either your experience as an interviewee or like what tools and what other things you as a company use. I have, and I do complete talks on hiring. I do them on LinkedIn to, make a little bit of advertisement for my job fair. So I've started presenting data which we have through running the job fair and to do other angles on that. So yes, that'd be a great topic. And other non-technical topics can be welcome at conferences. As Phil mentioned, talk on burnout is something which I saw that on your schedule. It's kind of interesting that you host that on your technical conference. And in that case, just be prepared that some people will give you negative comments. But I don't think like on job interviews you would get that, but like, a complete non-related talk to C++ conferences. I've seen all kinds of comments, even like for keynotes, like, whoa, this wasn't like related to C++ enough, or wasn't what I expected. And it's if you give a keynote or just a general talk, some of the feedback will be useful. Some of the feedback will be just thanks for giving the talk, and some of the feedback will be just people sitting in the wrong room.
You always have a choice.
Yeah. And with that, I think we're going to bring this to an end. I want to thank Phil for preparing the talk and for actually, caring for this and preparing lots of material and covering an interesting topic which we didn't have yet covered. So we will be able to cover that for the coming weeks and months and years. And it helps a lot.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for coming for the panel and also for getting this kicked off last year, Inbal. So
we're happy to get new talks and new speakers, always.
Indeed.
And thanks everyone who asked questions and contributed in the chat. It's a great crowd.
Yes, thank you for the questions and thank you for coming.
And thank you, Jens, for organizing. This is a great topic, and I'm always happy to. I think it's really important that you keep doing this.
Yes, thank you. That's maybe I want to probably, and at the end now, it's been a bit more difficult to organize this year because people are really busy, and I think in the coming years maybe it gets easier for me again because I attend conferences too, and then I can. Like if I would have been at C++ Now this year, I probably would have been able to find more speakers. Don't know if I want to say that, but Kevin Henney unfortunately didn't have time. He was very, very pleased about knowing that this event exists and would have loved to take part in it, but he's busy today. So, and we had, Inbal wanted to prepare something, but she's busy with the conference. Also understand that. And then we had another speaker drop out, which is David Sankel, and he's having a fever. That's also a good excuse. And I hope to see some of them next year. And CPP Cast, always awesome to listen to that. We would have had almost, because Timo also was very excited about that. But Timo is on holiday right now, so that's maybe also, I see a lot of speakers knowing about this now, and so we're going to continue that. That's a plan to do that every year, and we have a lot of good content from this year and last year, which is recorded and which I can play for hours and hours and hours, and we're going to see what fresh content we get and then mix up this, and this will be an awesome event. And one of the motivations is just to help the existing speakers to give better talks, and also to just give the new speakers a hand. And I think a lot of the talks and some things which has been mentioned today or last year has helped me and has helped other people, and there's always very, very positive feedback about this event. Has been a lot of positive feedback about this last year, and there's a lot of positive feedback coming for this probably when this is on YouTube later, and also going to write a blog post about it, so it's gonna find its content. And now we're gonna stop talking and take us offline. Thank you for coming. I want to thank Phil and Inbal again for hanging out here. And if you want to hang out with us again, then you're welcome to do so. But tonight we are now going to change into the lounge to, just have a casual conversation there. If you want to join me there, you're welcome to do so. And with that, final word to LinkedIn. I know some of your questions have not been covered because they were technically off topic today. I see that some people have come here to discuss in the chat like C++ questions, which is kind of fine. But also it's not part of the event, so I cannot cover that on stream. If you like ask me what's the best C++ framework, I don't know. But with that, I think it's a good time to go offline now. So thank you, everyone. Let's wave.